Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of ECH Postgame Live after another comeback in the third period against the Vancouver Canucks. Unfortunately, this one not finished off. The Canucks winning 4-3 in the shootout, but the Kraken do come back. They do earn a point in this one, and lots to talk about for this game. I want to start off by just saying that this one was really fun to be in the building for, despite the loss. It was really fun to be here. The reaction from the crowd, it was an awesome crowd tonight. I mean, tons of Kraken fans, of course, a lot of Vancouver fans. They traveled pretty well. The dueling chants, the Go Canucks Go, the Let's Go Kraken, the reactions for the goals really on both sides in this one. And then even the one that kind of hit the outside of the net. I think that's the first time here that I've heard a full goal reaction for something that wasn't actually a goal, but it was everything but the goal light, the goal horn, all that stuff. So that was pretty cool. So just cool to be in the building for this one. But yeah, there's some good, there's some bad in this one. We kind of break down all of that. But first, I do want to thank the sponsor for ECH Postgame Live, Queen Anne Beer Hall, sponsoring all these postgame lives. And new month, the calendar has turned over. It is January, which means, of course, a new burger of the month for Queen Anne Beer Hall, and it is the chopped cheese. It actually doesn't have the same form factor as their usual burgers. It is on a roll, as a good chopped cheese should be, but you got the ground beef, you got the tomatoes, you got the lettuce, you got the mayo, all the ingredients that you would expect in chopped cheese, and I cannot wait to go in there and try it before the next Kraken game. I'm going to get some pictures over there next time to show you, hopefully, on the next post game. So before we dive into chat, I just want to say it is me starting this off. Thankfully, Dylan is back. He was feeling well enough to go to the game with his back, so he is down talking with Coach Dan, talking with the players right now, and so he'll join us probably about half an hour and kind of hear the reaction from everybody on this one. But before that, if you're ready, I have a special guest for this episode here, and we have Glenn Dreyfus from Davy Jones' Locker Room. Here you go. You can take the earbud there so you can hear when Dylan comes on, so you can hear what he's saying. I guess you don't need it quite yet. But say hi to everybody, Glenn.
What I want to know is, the heck with the pictures of the burgers. I want to see the actual burgers and like in front of me.
Well, you don't have very far to walk. Queen Anne Beer Hall is right down there. They're open late. You can stop right after the game. Everybody saying hi to Glenn in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for the warm welcome for Glenn. So with that, we'll dive right into chat, and we'll start off with Zoe. Sucks to lose in the shootout, but that game tying goal was crazy. It was, and I don't know. To me, it just kind of felt a little inevitable, right? You were just waiting for the Canucks to blow it somehow, and they did. And as Zoe's saying, the arena was so loud. Glenn, what was it like? I mean, you were just a few seats over for me. What was your vantage point for that one?
It always helps when there's a large contingent of visiting fans, so that you get both sides trying to outshout the other. But I think the reason this ending is disappointing, despite getting the point, is that the Kraken were facing a team with its own crisis. 3 of their best players, Pedersen, Roenick, Hughes, all gone, and they lose their goalie, Demko, for the last half of the game. So the replacement has to come in cold. And this is a team where Patrick Alvane, the general manager, just said about Pedersen, well, yeah, we might trade him because he has to mature. So there's all kinds of drama with the Canucks. And like the Kraken did with the Rangers in New York, you have to take advantage of a team in turmoil. And they did, in the sense that they forced the game to overtime and had chances to win it. But you really need to step on a fragile team's throat. And the Canucks were there for the taking, and the Kraken did take them.
I do largely agree with that. And you're in line with what Andrew's saying here. I know we felt pretty good the last couple games, but taking a banged up Canucks team to OT twice and winning against Utah, I'm afraid Edmonton might bring us back to reality on Saturday. I mean, I think we might see something like that, but you're right about the Canucks being as banged up as they are and all the drama that they're going through, right? And I thought going into the game, Dylan was certainly telling me, right, this is going to be a very motivated Canucks team. He was saying, has there even been a team that's been so motivated that's come into this building before outside of a playoff situation? And I couldn't think of an obvious time. But starting off the game, they didn't really play like it. The Canucks didn't look very motivated. I didn't think they played all that well in this one. The Kraken do escape kind of by the skin of their teeth to get a point, but I'm with you. I think that you probably can bring a better effort against this Canucks team, and I mean losing Demko I think might have actually helped them. Just given that Demko just didn't look all that good to start this game. But I think there's the positive and the negative out of this one, that they do get a point, and it was an exciting game, just like that Vancouver game a few days ago. It's fun, it's exciting, but they didn't play well for most of the game. It just seems like the last 10 minutes or so are the only times that matter in a Kraken Canucks game.
The entertainment value was a 10 out of 10. Fans got their money's worth no matter who they were rooting for. That's true. But you add on to all the other factors that I mentioned earlier, the fact that Demko gives up what most would consider a pretty soft goal in the first 2 minutes. So you've got a fragile Canucks team, and then they give up a soft one. So you've got them right where you want them, questioning themselves, got Demko questioning himself. Now, to his credit, he did come up with a couple of 10 bell saves right after that. Bjorkstrand, the first of his 2 semi breakaways. The Kraken can't take advantage of that. They had one other grade A opportunity as well that Demko, he wasn't fragile, at least till he got hurt. So the Kraken dominated. Vancouver only had 1 shot on goal in the first 11 minutes.
Yeah, it looked like it.
The fact that the Kraken only got 1 goal was a shame.
And the chance that still stands out in my mind was the 2-on-1 shortly after the goal with Andre Burakovsky and Chandler Stevenson coming down the ice. Burakovsky has the puck. He's on the same side that Stevenson scored that easy goal from, right? And he elects to pass, and he telegraphs the pass pretty badly too. That's one where I want to see him shoot that puck, have that shooting mentality that Coach Bilesman's talked about, and try and, because if that goes in, that really helps put the Canucks away. That is taking advantage of the fragile opponent, like you said. And I want to see that shooting mentality from him in that spot.
Yeah. Has anybody mentioned to Burakovsky that the Kraken should be shooting more?
I know. It feels like it's been all around him. Yeah, it feels like everybody has mentioned it around the team. So hopefully that message gets through. And as we turn back to chat here, Ethan saying the shootout curse returns, but exciting last few minutes in overtime, though. As far as the shootout, I mean, the Kraken, 3 shooters, no goals in the shootout for any of them. They've had these problems before. I have mentioned my preferred shootout shooters. I've been lobbying for Adam Larson, Jamie Alexiak, and Will Borgen, although Borgen's not really a possibility anymore. What do you think of the shootout strategy? Do you mind the shooters? I know it's basically a skills competition. It's hard to really predict, but I don't know. I might like to see some different shooters. And they did go with one different in Capo Caco this time.
The Europeans are usually good in shootouts because they're used to playing on bigger ice and having more room to freewheel. They're usually also, as a rule, good stick handlers. So I thought it was an inspired choice, and I thought overall that Kako had another good game for the Kraken. But on the other side, like you saw with the Connor Garland breakaway goal, whatever Philip Grubauer's strengths are, stopping breakaways, stopping one-on-one confrontations with shooters, in my experience, that's not his strong point. Joey Decord is better because of his athleticism. That's not how Grubauer gets it done. So when you get to a shootout, I kind of feel like the Kraken with Grubauer in net, for better or worse, are behind the 8 ball.
A little bit, and I know Joey has a tendency to kind of bite on some of the better shootout moves, right? But Grubauer, it does seem like he does, draw back into his net quite a bit, and you can get him there, and he is a smaller goaltender. And so if you can do that, like I say, JT Miller did, there are plenty of spots in the net that you can pick. And so
when you saw Connor Garland,
yes,
bearing down on Grubauer, what was your confidence factor that he was going to make the save?
very little, but it was more on Garland than on Grubauer, honestly. And as Matty says, I don't like that Garland fella. I understand from a Kraken perspective. I'm sorry. I love him as a player. You got to respect him. I love the fight and the energy that he brings. As undersized as he is, he's one of those opponents that I feel like you just got to respect. And then maybe that's the way that Matty meant it, and he's doing his job if you don't like him, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of why I was confident in that breakaway. Connor Garland, he's a Kraken killer too. He's, I think, have 14 points in 13 career games against the Seattle Kraken. We looked it up. Yeah, he's been very successful. And then here was we turn back to we've got if I don't lose that. We have a super chat here from Jenna. Dunn said, sucks to lose to one of our rivals in his post-game interview. Are they officially a rival? I've heard conflicting opinions. Now it's something that was kind of forced. It felt like, year one with the Kraken and Canucks, before they even played a game, it was talked about, these are the two big rivals, right? Certainly wasn't to start with. Are we seeing a bit of a rivalry brewing? It did get chippy at times in this game. And you could see a little bit more hatred on the two sides. I feel like if the Kraken had completed the comeback here, that really would have sealed it, but unfortunately they couldn't get it done.
Well, the old story, the two teams are really going to have to meet in a playoff series before the fan bases and the two teams are really going to reach that level of hatred that makes a rivalry. For my money, the Kraken and Utah were just as chippy a couple of nights ago, and they don't have any history at all. So, we're nice here in the Pacific Northwest. It's harder than it is with the Yankees and Red Sox or even with the Celtics and Lakers or teams like that. But until there's a playoff series, it's kind of manufactured.
Yeah, I think it does take a playoff series to really build a proper rivalry. But we're seeing the groundwork that I think if these two teams did meet in the playoffs, absolutely it would pop off and become a rivalry, especially just given how many Canucks fans in the building tonight and kind of the back and forth there too. I feel like if you were at this game, there was probably a Canucks fan sitting around you. There was, or if you're a Canucks fan, all the Kraken fans sitting around you. The back and forth was really great.
Well, to be fair, there were a sizable number of Kraken fans up in Vancouver.
That's
on
true.
Saturday. So you're going to have fans from the other team, no matter the sport and no matter the location. And that's healthy.
Yeah. And super chat here from Light. Didn't get to see anything other than the last 5. Happy with the point and a multi-point game by Matty and a Shane point too. I'm curious, Light, was that an intentional? You said didn't get to, but I would understand going into this game just thinking, you know what, given what happened 5 days ago, I'm only going to watch the last 5 minutes of regulation and just kind of see what happens from there. It wouldn't be a bad call.
This isn't an NBA game. You really have to watch it from the beginning or you don't get the context. But if you wanted a glimpse of the Kraken future, I don't remember all that many times when Matty and Shane have teamed up on a goal. And the way that puck was onto Shane's stick and then off of it in an instant, and then same with Matty, a fraction of an instant from the bumper position and back of the net. Boy, I would sure like to think that's the first of several hundred times we'll see that.
I would hope so, and I love that goal. That was my favorite goal of the game because I have been begging them to run that play. It's a very simple play, right? You go high, low, and then back to the bumper high. It's an incredibly common play in the NHL. It feels like every power play has that as one of the plays they can go to. We see it so rarely from the Kraken, and I just want them to have that regularly in their repertoire. And they have players that can do it, right? They can execute well on it. But I do love seeing the Matty goal from Shane. I know must have been like 20 games or so into the season where somebody pointed out in chat after a game that it was the first game that Matty and Shane actually just both had a point in the same game. Yeah. So I'd have to go back and see when the last goal, that was assisted by the other one happened. But yeah, it might have been a while. And Light, no, just wasn't able to see the game. I'm in Florida and was busy being at Miss America. All right, well, that sounds like a good reason to skip 55 minutes of the game, huh?
If you were with Miss America, maybe. But if you're just watching Miss America,
okay, Glenn. All right, maybe not as much a fan of the Miss America pageant.
can I mention a couple of other names that I guarantee you haven't mentioned, but they had a big effect on the outcome of
Go
this
ahead,
game?
Glenn.
I wrote them down.
Oh, okay. They see
so
the
you know it's official because
Is that on the back of a receipt?
Yes.
What is that? Okay.
A bank deposit.
Okay.
Okay.
We know you make bank deposits, Glenn. You don't have to wave it in our face like that.
Libor Suchanek.
Okay.
And Joe Mahan.
Okay. Now I don't recognize those players from the rosters of either team tonight. How did those players impact the game?
Well, because they were the two lines persons.
Oh, okay.
And the Kraken were called for an egregious intentional offside, which was over officiating in the extreme. The importance of a play being called an intentional offside is that instead of a normal offside where the face-off is just outside the blue line and it's at center ice, is because it was determined that Ty Carte went into the zone and didn't make enough effort to get out, that the Kraken intentionally wanted the stoppage of play. The face-off was all the way back in the Kraken zone. And what that resulted in was...
Remind everyone when this was in the game.
This was in the second period. The game was tied 1-1. The Kraken lose the face-off. The Canucks get aggressive in the zone. They end up getting that pinball goal for their second score to make it a 2-1 game. I don't believe, and Brandon Tanev would back me up on this because he was pretty vocal, that this wasn't an intentional offside. And to my eyes, Carte made an effort to exit the zone. It was offside, but I don't think it was an intentional offside, and it directly led to a Canucks goal.
Okay. I mean, that's one that I feel like, again, I didn't watch the broadcast, of course, being here in person. That feels like one that Edzo would be all over and would not let go for the rest of the game. But that is an interesting observation. I actually didn't really catch that at the time. And you know what? We have Dylan here, and this was really fast. I mean, this is less than 18 minutes in. This is, might be around record territory here. So let's have Dylan join us as I pull up the, there we go. Wow. Okay. I need more practice with this.
Well,
there we go.
While you're waiting, I'll tell people why I'm on. I watch these post-game shows, and they are top heavy with hosts who know how to talk about hockey. And I thought you needed a little balance.
Okay. And I mean, hey, the Dylan, you missed it, but Glenn was pulling out receipts for bank deposits. He was waving them around. Glenn has been awesome on here. But I want to welcome you to Postgame Live.
Yeah,
that was really fast.
Yeah, I know. I'm like worried my computer is going to run out of charge. I have to get through so much postgame here. Look, guys didn't have too much to say, right? This game is kind of one of those that speaks for itself in the sense that, you come out, you play strong at the beginning, start making a little bit of mistakes there. Second period doesn't really go the way you want to. You find yourself in the hole, come back, last 10 minutes of the game, start working your way back, kind of have that late game magic that this team has really had through a lot of this season. We know and have talked about several times in the past on this and the podcast that that's really when this team steps up and really starts going for it. And they did that again tonight. You get the big tying goal with the goaltender pulled, which is starting to feel fairly regular with this group. But then you're just, not quite able to get it done in overtime. And then obviously the shootout doesn't go your way. But for the most part, I mean, this game just kind of spoke for itself. And that's really what we got from both Matty Beniers as well as Brandon Montour, and then really from Dan Bilesma as well. I mean, it was just kind of like, how'd you think the second period went? Didn't didn't go as well as we wanted it to. How do you think this game compared to the first game against the Canucks 5 days ago? Went way better, right? We weren't like a mess through the first 55 minutes of the game. Matty Beniers has a field to be scoring again. And what are you seeing? And it's just, it feels great. And got a great pass from Shane Wright. He was in a good spot in the slot and was able to put it home. There really just wasn't too much to really dig into with this one.
Okay, well, one reason that maybe they didn't mention, we got a super chat here from Michael I want to make sure to get to before we kind of dive further into what everyone said, was I'll take the blame for this one. Didn't get home and get the lucky new jersey on until the third period. My bad. I mean, the timing really works out on that for Michael, huh?
Yeah, it does. It really does. That does seem like it would be it.
Appreciate you taking the blame there, Michael, for this one. But as far as, I guess, kind of responsibility for this one, right? I mean, given that it was another late comeback in the third period, they did put themselves in the position where they were down 3-1. Was there any talk of needing to be better before it gets to that point?
Not directly, but there was still plenty of talk from the players about the second period not really going the way that they wanted it to and that they needed to play better. Plenty of talk from Dan Bylsma about those long sequences where they were trapped in their own zone in the second period. I mean, obviously there's that insane one where Jamie Alexiak's out there for over 4 minutes. Adam Larson's out there with him for 3 minutes. I think Shane Wright was stuck out there for over 3 minutes as part of all of that. And he talked about it, right? Those all come from turnovers in your own zone. They all come from turnovers at the blue line. Those are plays and mistakes that you just can't make. And yeah, great. Philip Grubauer was there and he was able to help bail you out of that situation. And yeah, those guys were able to play as well as you could, being as exhausted as they had to have been. But you shouldn't be in that situation, right? And, obviously there's the realities of a second period, which is you have the long change. You have to do a better job of getting the puck up the ice during the second period. You cannot afford to be, in those situations. And the fact that they escaped from those couple sequences as unscathed as they were, that's kind of had the feeling of him saying that's more luck than skill, right? Like that's just not a situation you want to find yourself in. Everybody did play well, all things considered, but you can't afford to do that kind of game after game. It should not be something that becomes habit.
Right. Now, I want to get Glenn's take here too. After kind of hearing what, the players and coach Dan had to say, I mean, do you agree this is a game that's kind of self-explanatory, or would you have liked to, maybe hear something a little bit more different? Or if you were Coach Dan, what would you point to as far as, reason for losing this one?
After the Saturday victory over Vancouver, Bylsma still called that game a mess. Mm-hmm. So they didn't fall 3 goals behind, but Dylan mentioned what I think was the key sequence of the whole game, even though it didn't result in a goal. That 4-minute stretch when in the middle period, when the Canucks just kept the Kraken pinned and helpless like a kitten in their own zone. I counted 3 failed clears by the Kraken, and maybe they didn't have enough energy to push the puck out to center or skate it out to center. When they finally get it out to center, they still don't get it far enough so that they can get all the tired players off the ice. And this is why I'm so glad Dylan brought this up. Larson had a 4-minute, 16-second shift, Alexiak over 3 minutes. They were basically standing in front of Grubauer, hoping something good would happen. And it was Grubauer to the rescue. And I haven't said that all that often, but let me give the man his due.
He deserves credit for it.
Saves. He made great saves. He made 5 total saves in that sequence, but the Kraken were hopelessly pinned. And that needs to be something that they need to review and see, what did we do wrong there so we don't get caught like that again. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What does that take out of players that maybe even later in the game it matters? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I think they can wear on. Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Lars played it as well as he could. Like, you could tell he was really kind of conserving energy and using it only when he really had to. Really, the 2 times where he had to go behind the net, I felt like those were the sequences where You could tell that he was moving slower, but it was all done very purposefully, and he was going to wait until the puck was really there before he was going to engage physically. That's really the thing, right? There's the skating component of it all, but that engagement physically, being able to go mano a mano with somebody else, that's a full body experience. That's where that lack of energy is felt the most. And so you could tell that both him and Alexiak were really trying to wait, pick and choose their spots on when to engage somebody physically, because that's really what's going to take it out of you. That's the battle you're not going to be able to win, even if you have the size advantage, which those guys usually do. Certainly Jamie Alexiak does. Even with the size advantage, you're not going to have the strength advantage because you are tired, because your body is feeling it at that point, because you are not getting enough oxygen circulated throughout your body, because you've been out there huffing and puffing at that point for probably 2 minutes longer than you should have been. And so I thought that it was kind of a masterclass, certainly by Adam Larson, on really waiting until the last minute before he had to tie somebody up in a board battle, because he knew he was not going to be able to give those situations as much as he normally would. And it's just kind of unfortunate that because so many people were caught out there, like I said, you had forwards pushing 3 minutes and over 3 minutes. It meant that he was able to get no help, right? Like, you couldn't afford to have both Alexiak and Larson behind the net in a sequence like that. You couldn't afford to have Shane Wright go and try to help out Adam Larson in those sequences. So a lot of the situations where you would normally be able to get a board battle going and maybe get a change of possession there and get the puck up the ice, because everybody was so tired, you just couldn't really afford to commit that many people below the goal line or to engage physically, because you're realistically probably not going to win those board battles the way that you need to, or the way that you normally would, just because everybody is so tired. So I know a lot of the emphasis gets put on skating, and you'll see that guys are a lot more stationary for sure out there. But I think a big component of it that doesn't get talked about all that often is the physical component, as far as being able to tie somebody up in a board battle, engage somebody physically net front, right? You start seeing guys get away with more net front because you just don't have the energy, right, that it's going to take to engage both of your legs, engage your core, engage your upper body, leaning into a guy and trying to do that battle net front. I think all of that stuff just got ripped away from that team because, again, you're talking about 4 players really being stuck out there for roughly 3-minute sequence. It's just way too long. And again, as Dan pointed out, it came because of multiple turnovers, and especially multiple turnovers trying to get the puck over the blue line, and you just can't afford to do that.
And the one other thing that amazed me, and Dylan, I don't know about you, almost always in these situations, if a goal isn't scored, the team that's trapped ends up taking a penalty, and the Kraken didn't.
Yeah. No, that's a good
big
no,
thing
that's
at the box.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And we have seen that from this team this year. I mean, they are unbelievable at staying disciplined, really, regardless of the sequence, whether it's defending on breakaways or odd man rushes, a sequence like this where they're trapped out there for a long period of time. But remember, it's not that long ago, right? It's just a month ago that we were talking about multiple games on end with just them not taking a penalty at all. I think one of the unsung things about this group and about the coaching staff has to be the fact that this team has been remarkably disciplined, all things considered.
Yeah, I think that's been a theme all season. Now, I want to get to a couple super chats. Sorry, I know they've been up there for a little while, but super chat here from Jeremiah. Sometimes a loss feels like a win, but always a win when I get to listen to the Emerald City Hockey Boys. Happy New Year! Happy New Year to you too, Jeremiah. And we've had a couple Alaska connections in these last couple games with the flight deal, and last time, and then this, of course, with the college coach, or I mean the college hockey program as well that was there. So that was pretty cool. And then super chat here from Trish. Happy New Year's. At least it was a fun game. Yeah, it was definitely a fun one to be at. I don't know about you. That's kind of how I started the post game, Dylan, with just how much fun it was to be in the building for this one.
Yeah, we were talking about it kind of on our way to do media. Like, hey, look, vibes were good, right? There was energy. You felt excited watching this game. This team feels alive in a way that they didn't last year. I don't know how many jokes Glenn has made like that already, so apologies if that's like the 5th one already this stream.
By the way,
here we
go. What point pace are the Kraken at now, roughly?
For the season or for this year?
Yeah. Well, for the season.
For the season, I got to think it's still not great.
I mean, they're one game under 500, so like
500, 80. So like 80, yeah.
And last year, under the despicable Dave Hackstall, they finished with 81 points. And I would hazard to say the Kraken have a better roster this year than they did last year. So maybe it wasn't all the coaching.
We've talked about that and gone over
we've
that.
had extended conversations about like the coaching not being the sole factor.
Right. And I think there's a component to that for sure. I do think that, there's been an element of some guys on this roster just having poor luck. Matty Beniers being the kind of key guy in all of that. He's been generating chances, more high danger chances this year, been shooting maybe a little bit more, at least getting more shots on net than he has in years past. He just has not had any success with it, right? Being, one of the unluckiest shooters from high danger areas on the ice in all of the NHL. That luck is starting to turn for him. Obviously, this is really the first goal in this 3-game goal streak that he has that feels like a very earned goal. It feels like a goal that was supposed to happen, unlike the kind of misplay in that first Vancouver game, and then whatever that game against that goal against Utah was for him. So it does seem like the luck is starting to turn with him. It seems like that luck, started to turn for some other guys. I just think it's important that right now they're playing exciting hockey. They're getting the fans in the building excited. Yes, you're leaving after a disappointment in the shootout, but you got to see that comeback if you were here in the building tonight. This building was more electric than I've heard it in a long time, right? And I know I haven't been around a lot, but I feel like I probably didn't miss too many electric moments in this building in the last month, really, if we're thinking about it. But the building was electric tonight. I got to think if this is a game that you're watching on television, right? You're excited, you're screaming in your living room, you're watching this game wherever you are and you're enjoying it and you're getting that love for this team back that I feel like has really largely been lost since Thanksgiving, just because of the way the season has gone, the outlook on the playoffs and how low their chances are for all of that. I just feel like the more games that we get like this, where the team not only feels competitive, but can play an entertaining style of hockey, and you're getting contributions from their young guys like Shane Wright with the beautiful feed to Matty Beniers scoring more goals. Capo Caco, who should be a part of this group for a longer period of time, he's looking really good, and you're getting him going. Philip Grubauer's rebounding nicely and starting to string together a couple games of solid performances here. I just feel like all of these things are still massive wins for the team. Yes, it's a huge hole that they have to climb out of. They're not on a great points pace. The odds of the playoffs are not necessarily there for them, but this team is exciting again. You want to root for them, and you're seeing the contributions from the young players that you can have that optimistic future outlook for beyond just what's going to happen the rest of this year.
And that's a sentiment that we've seen a lot in chat tonight too. I mean, Mason talking about the way Climate Pledge popped tonight. Amanda, in all caps, lose fun. I think this was, definitely an element of losing fun.
Yeah.
And then as you Mason again, Glenn is trying to get ECH's media badges pulled there. The criticism of the coaching staff is actually not something we've been plenty critical of the players, the GM. We haven't really, had that much criticism of the coaching staff after games like this. But I do want to say, Glenn, Viren, who's a regular in chat, wants to take you to task on something that you said earlier with the Grubauer thing, saying Grubauer has a shootout save percentage of 763. Decords is 522. Your memory is not reliable. And then adding a few more stats to that as well. Grubauer, I think 6 and 5 in the shootout. And then Grubauer shootout save percentage since Kraken year one is 26 out of 104 goalies with at least one shootout games played in that period. No matter how many times you make the claim, he is not the problem with the shootout. So I'll give you a chance to respond here, Glenn.
Okay.
Viren always will pull up the stats and
the numbers do not lie.
Okay, now
she keeps us honest.
All right, so here's what I'm going to say, talking directly to the ECH, the vast worldwide ECH audience. You can't really appreciate Dylan and RJ if those are the only two people you see. You have to have other people come on and talk gibberish so that you can really appreciate what you have with these guys. And to all of you, I say, you're welcome.
There we go.
Glenn did say earlier that was basically his reason for coming on the show.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of chat. I kind of with
Dylan
coming. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, RJ, I kind of want to hear your opinion on some of this stuff though, because right, like what are your thoughts on the second period and kind of how that went? I mean, I don't know if you kind of covered this already on the post game, but I'm curious your thoughts on the second period and then those prolonged sequences where they were trapped and just kind of, you know, we saw how messy that first Vancouver game was, right? Obviously, this one, like Matty Beniers said, way better than that game, but you did still have a rough second period. You did still find yourself trapped in that hole. I'm just kind of wondering your thoughts on some of that.
Yeah, and I haven't really covered it yet. I've kind of tried to be the good host here, and
Yeah.
and let the others do the talking. But I look, I don't like sequences like that. Like I think once you're already trapped in the zone like that, they played it all right, kind of to your point and what you said. But I, you can't get yourself in that situation again. This Canucks team is so depleted, especially on the blue line. That's the biggest thing I noticed. All of their defensemen are just, of the big, slow variety that don't have a whole lot of puck skills. And I feel like the Kraken didn't really take advantage of that as much as they should have. And this is a team that, if you forecheck them hard, if you kind of put them in spots where the defensemen have to make plays, they can't really do that. And I think, look, the Kraken didn't play as bad as they did in the first 55 minutes of the last Vancouver game. This isn't one that they, I think, deserve to lose as much as that one, but I would still put it in the category of that they deserve to lose given how they played. And this is a very beat up Vancouver team. I feel like the Kraken, got maybe even a little bit better than what they deserved in this one, if I'm being honest. You just stretches like that against teams that are a little bit better, you're probably not going to get away with, and you're certainly not going to get away with it against the next opponent. That said, I think we're at the point of the season. I'm trying to get myself here mentally, right, where you just kind of try and I don't know, at the Christmas break, I that was the point where I'm like, okay, look, they're not going to make the playoffs. I think we all we did the whole podcast that was titled, right, like resetting expectations.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did for myself. And so I'm just trying to find the joy and the fun in games like this. And I think I found it tonight. I had a fun time watching that game. A lot of it was, because you were there next to me and we're able to just kind of like, ride all the crazy moments of this one together. And I think that's my main takeaway from this. So if you ask me my thoughts about, look, where does this mean for the rest of the season? Are they going to be able to kind of climb that crazy mountain and get back to the playoffs? No, but I don't know. I'm still kind of taking the joy out of this one. As Jake says, downer. I'm trying not to be. I really am. I think, but you asked me my opinion on that, so that's kind of my whole take on everything.
I would take finishes like this and the way the last couple games have gone over just some of the sequences that we had last year, right? Like those were really brutal times. There was just really nothing that you could point to even have kind of optimism for the future, right? We had that brief stint of Shane Wright, and he came in and looked good. But outside of that, Matty wasn't playing well. You didn't have somebody like Capo Caco around. You didn't, Riker Evans was kind of like stuck on the third line. What's he doing, right? Like there was really nothing to kind of that you could look to and kind of hold on to and be like, look, it might be okay next year. There's more of that this time around. And just having those guys play well, having the team as a whole just be a little bit more competitive than they were down the stretch last year, I think is going to go a long way with a lot of that.
Yeah, and I see Viran. I'm just sad I can't litter this chat with Czech flags. Me too. I would love to do that. I would love to bring a Czech flag and hold it up. That was a fun game. We caught the final minute of that right after Kraken puck drop. I had it on my laptop and go Czechia. Like they're a fun team to watch. Canada deserved to lose in that tournament, to the way they picked their roster, the way they made all their decisions. Yeah. So that was fun. I am loving the World Juniors and Edward Chalet, as Jake's mentioning.
Well, let me pick up on that, because if you want to stoke the embers of good feeling for the Kraken, turn your attention to the World Juniors, where the Kraken had 8 prospects. Not all participated as much, but there was a lot to like, including some of the later round draft pick for Sweden, Zeb Forsval. Have you done a lot of Zeb Forsval discussion?
I know Dylan's
mentioned. I had some earlier on Discord, actually. I mean, Zeb Forsval is a guy that is going to be a fourth liner if he makes it, kind of thing, right? Like that is who he is. He is a picture perfect fourth line kind of guy. He's going to be an energy guy for you. He's going to be a PKer for you. He's going to have a good, solid career being one of those kind of bottom 6 traditional checking line kind of guys. He has had a great tournament so far this year, being a lot more involved with Sweden. Yeah, he's
on the
he's
biggest
been way more
stage.
involved this year for Team Sweden
Yeah.
than he has in years past. It's been great to see him have that opportunity. Chalet with Czechia, right? He is captain of that team. He's the last holdover from that big group that they had that's really led them to a lot of success at the World Junior stage these last couple of years. He was kind of the baby with that group. Here he is now leading this team. They're able to defeat Canada to advance in the tournament. I mean, brutal for them, right? Finish second in your group. And hey, guess what? Your big reward is you have to go and play Canada in a one-off game in Ottawa, right? In the nation's capital. Like, good luck with that, Czechia. But Czechia was there. They showed up for that game. Chalet showed up for that game, as he has in every game that they have played with that group. He picks up another goal in this one. It's great to see him playing as well as he is, being surrounded by his countrymen, being surrounded by people who've spoken his language. We know how brutal last year was for him, just being away from Europe, being away from home, being, in a place where he doesn't speak the language that great, all of that kind of stuff that he has talked about. I don't need to go over it all again. But what we're seeing is when Chalet feels comfortable, right? Like he did early season in Coachella Valley before he kind of hit the rookie wall there. And then now again with Team Czechia at the World Juniors. When Chalet feels comfortable, he's able to build confidence. And when Chalet has confidence, he looks like that guy that you drafted in the first round, right? He looks like a guy that in another draft probably pushes to be a top 10 pick based on the skills that he has, right? And so getting to see him like that, being able to see him smile as much as he has, especially today, just go and look at his Twitter feed right now and all the stuff that he's posted. It's the happiest you've ever seen him. Like, seriously, it really is. And I'm very happy for him that he's getting to experience this. Vibager has also been fantastic there. On Canada's side, obviously, horribly disappointing tournament for Team Canada. There's no doubts about that at all. But on the bright side for the Kraken, there was Berkeley Catton, who was able to go out there and really create offense for that team in a way that nobody else could. And I know he only had 1 point, but he still, he had so many shots on goal. There was often times where he was the only guy that they were talking about during intermissions in any sort of positive light because of his back checking, because of his ability to defend through the neutral zone, because of his ability to take those pucks out of the neutral zone and get back up ice quickly, be able to drive lanes and get to the goaltender despite his slight frame. There was a lot of positive stuff from Berkeley Catton in this tournament. On the flip side, you could say he's already in true Kraken form because he had like 20 shots from high danger chances and he wasn't able to score on any of them. So if that doesn't say Kraken, I don't know what else does. But it was still a very positive tournament from Berkeley Catton with Team Canada because really up front, you could say him and Gavin McKenna were their only two consistent performers through a lot of this tournament. The only guys that consistently showed up and had certainly 200-foot games and were able to play complete games for that group. And I think that that's important. That's still a solid takeaway, despite the fact that the numbers weren't really there for Berkeley Catton. Like I said, every Canada game, he was the highlighted player that they would talk about playing the game the right way and doing what the rest of that squad needed to do. I think it's a shame that Carson Rykoff wasn't able to play more for Team Canada. I think everybody questioned the decision to sit him as much as they did in this tournament, and the fact that he scored 52 goals in the OHL last year. You're going to sit him with a do-or-die game today against Czechia, and then, hey, guess what? Yeah, you put up 3 goals, which is better than you've been able to do, but it still was not enough to overcome a Czech team that, just kind of outcoached you. I think it's just a shame that we didn't get to see Carson Rykoff as, a guy age-wise that should be able to dominate in a tournament like this, and he just wasn't really ever afforded the opportunity to.
Yeah, and as Kara mentioning with Catton, he was also able to draw a penalty on Chalet that almost changed the outcome of that game too. So that was a moment in this one that was kind of funny. And I do want to talk about Chalet just a little bit more real quick, because it's been cool having, and I love this from Sam, it's cool seeing him get so animated after his goal, considering, he has a knack for not celebrating after goals. So that's cool to see. But it's also been nice having Alish Deska around with the Kraken, because it's allowed us to learn a little bit more about Edward Chalet, because down in Coachella Valley, they're teammates, of course, and they're both Czech, right? And so Shale actually has been living with Alex Stezka and Stezka's family. And so Stezka's kind of taken him in and kind of helped mentor him, get him used to the North American game. And I mean, Shale's even like babysitting Stezka's kids now. And they're, it's really a great situation there. And we talked about it going into the season, just hoping that Shale could be just in a good situation off the ice, right? Given how rough last year was for him. And from the stories that we're hearing from the room, right, via Stezka, via, other people, right, it sounds like Shale is in a really good spot. And I mean, we're seeing the results on the ice too.
Well, let me give you a couple of other kind of between the lines ways that I think he's matured. One is in the game against Sweden, his team took 30 shots. He took 10 of them. So he not being afraid to call your own number, I think, is an indication that you're willing to be front and center. And then also after the Sweden game, which they lost, and they had a number of penalties in that game, he was the one reporters went to, and he was quoted. And we know he's been kind of shy and retiring, but they're going to him for quotes, and he's speaking up for his team. So in all ways, on and off the ice. And you got to remember, again, these are teenagers. I mean, we were just talking before the game about how Shane Wright is just about to turn 21, and Matty's 22, and Capo Caco is 23. And this is, I think there's a real good chance that if we were to step in the time machine and come out Kraken year 10, that we'd find out that this could be a powerhouse, a dominant team with all the youngsters that are maturing and coming through the pipeline. I think the future is extremely bright. We just have to be patient.
Yeah, and I know that's a lot of what Ron Francis is talking about, and like the prospect pool does seem really good.
Julius Miettinen.
Yeah, he's been good for Finland as well. Finland moving on to the semis. Still lots of good World Junior hockey to watch. And I see everyone talking about like Dave Cameron and the bad coaching job with Canada. Like that's what you want your coach to say. What would you like me to do?
Yeah. Well, I'll say one thing about Carson Rakoff. He only played in 2 games, but on a power play, he stood in front of the net and screened the goalie, and Canada scored its only goal in that game because he went to the dirty areas. So he's not just a 50-goal scorer who wants to use his skill to beat people. He's doing things that he'll need to do at the next level. So the Kraken prospects, by and large, are shining.
Yep. Now, I know there's a lot from chat that I kind of had to skip over with Dylan joining earlier and all that stuff. So if there's something that I missed or something I skipped over, feel free to throw that back in chat as we've, got like 10 to 15 minutes left or so. I know there was a question earlier on, where was it? Did anyone ever see or hear what exactly happened to Demko? I mean, looked like, an injury may have, go ahead, Glenn.
So he was a victim of friendly fire. And now I can't remember the guy's name.
Noah Juleson.
Noah Juleson, the same guy who a puck went off his tush in Vancouver on the Schwartz goal and past Demko. He and Demko didn't see each other. They collided, and that's when Demko got hurt.
Yeah, I saw the replay of that, and hopefully Demko's okay. I just, you hate the injury stuff that he's dealing with. Hopefully he can stay healthy there. And I just went from XKidZ. My ECH t-shirt still hasn't seen a win, but at least it's got a first point tonight. Progress. Glad you got the shirt in there. Yeah, it worked.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
And we did have word from Coach Rick Tocchet on what Thatcher Demko was dealing with post game.
Oh,
and the official word was back spasms.
Oh, okay.
Which I heard that and was like, no, I'm fine, actually. But if that's what Thatcher Demko's been dealing with, I mean, good luck to him. I wish him well. It is brutal.
Yeah, no, it is rough. I mean, at least it's a relief to hear that it sounds like it's not related to his previous injury that,
Yeah.
maybe he'll never be able to fully get over. So at least that's a good sign. And then Brooke putting in there, I know I saw it earlier in chat, had to kind of skip over it. Really not a fan of Burakovsky. What'd you think of Berkey's game tonight? I know we've kind of talked about him, various points of the season, and he's been in the lineup ahead of Daniel Sprong, which I know, after the Vancouver comeback that Sprong was kind of instrumental in a couple games ago, we were maybe questioning why he came out of the lineup there. I don't know. What do you think of Berkey back in that spot instead?
So I know the biggest play involving Andre Burakovsky in this one is going to be that sequence in the first period where it's the 2-on-1 and he's looking past the whole way and he never makes the play that he needs to make, which is he's bearing down on Thatcher Demko, who has already given up a soft goal. How do you not take the shot there, right? And that is a very valid criticism, critique, whatever it is that you want to call it. I thought Berkey actually rebounded pretty well from that, and I liked a lot of what he was doing in the offensive zone. He is playing a lot more east-west. We are seeing him go to the middle of the ice a lot more. I liked that he took a shot later on that ended up kind of on the net side, right? Kind of fooled all of us in that sequence, but it was a great one-timer opportunity from him. I thought that he looked a little bit more like classic Andre Burakovsky in this one, RJ, as far as his ability to move around with the puck in the offensive zone and kind of see the ice a little bit better than it feels like he's been seeing the ice. Really this season, or really last season too, if we want to go there. That one sequence at the beginning is very damning, right? I will give you that. It is a sequence, and that's the exact kind of sequence that the Kraken need to get out of their game, right? They need to have more of that shoot first mentality. We've been seeing more of it lately, but that's exactly the kind of play where you don't really have a lane over to your guy. The last thing you also want to be doing is looking past the whole way. Goalie has been shaky. This is a chance to really jump on him. You can't do that. But I felt like Andre Burakovsky rebounded and played a pretty strong game. And I still just, as long as the other option is going to be Daniel Sprong, give me Berkey all day, because Daniel Sprong is just not going to give you consistent play, we'll call it.
Not disagreeing with any of that, or with the fact that Burakovsky has been a disappointment during his Kraken tenure, but he made a play in his own zone in overtime that at that moment saved the game. The puck was behind Grubauer. He was down and out. The puck is laying there, and Berkey, just like cradling a baby, he just takes the puck without, a frantic movement that might have knocked it in his own net. And he cradles it and takes it to safety behind the net. And that, to me, showed Berkey in his own zone playing responsibly, and at that point maybe saving the game. So I thought he deserved kudos for that.
Yeah, and Jake pointed that out as well. He did save a goal tonight. I think the poise and the calm there was really good from Burakovsky. And Brooke kind of following up, felt like Berkey wasted the last 30 seconds of OT circling around after a lot of good chances to send it to a shootout, and it just irritated me. Now, on that, look, we know the Kraken are not good with shootouts, and so maybe they should be a little bit more aggressive in those situations, knowing the kind of team you are in the shootout. Ordinarily, I'd be okay with that because, and I'll let you say the line, Dylan.
Possession is 9/10 of overtime.
It's true. Possession is so important in overtime, and generally you want to be really careful about having possession and not giving it up. But if you are that close to a shootout, and given the Kraken's, a lack of success in the shootout, maybe you want to be a little bit more aggressive there. But it's one of those where, like, I don't mind not giving up possession ordinarily. Certainly if it's earlier in overtime.
I was going to say, I think that's something that a player is going to be coached to do in that situation, which is if you do not see the rush opportunity developing in front of you, just let it go to a shootout because you don't want to risk anything bad happening. Is that coaching scared? Maybe a little bit. 3-on-3 overtime, though, is pretty wild. Just look at the last game that they played and what happened with Tyler Myers. I will say this. I do think in a game like this where you are facing a Vancouver team that is just so clearly missing so many key players, if there is a time to take that risk and really just go all out on the gas pedal, it's probably against this team. So could he have done it? I do think he might have been able to. I'd have to go back and see the situation up ice. It's very possible that he didn't really have anybody getting open in the neutral zone. Everybody was just kind of content to take it to the shootout, which is very possibly what happened there. So I that's something to think about. But I do think if there was a time to do it, it's probably tonight against this Vancouver team.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Tyler Myers took 3 separate shifts in overtime for Vancouver. I could not believe it. He was atrocious in overtime. I don't know why they'd send him back out there, but they did. And so, yeah, maybe that's a reason to get a little bit more aggressive with that one. And by the way, I saw some people talking about it earlier, saying that maybe the Myers kind of takedown of Matty Beniers in overtime should have been a penalty. Yeah, I thought it probably was on the penalty side of that line. I understand. In overtime, you're never can be sure that anything's going to get called because it's overtime. But yeah, if that was me, the arm would have gone up personally. Bryce, I feel like a coach wouldn't be happy if you told them you took a risk because your teammates suck at the shootout. It's not one of those things you can say.
Yes.
You know, I
better spoken through action.
Critical of this team, but I think the bottom line here is they had no business losing this game at home to the Canucks when, as both of you have said, the Canucks were depleted. Their dressing room is fractionalized. Look that up. I don't think it's a word. But JT Miller and Elias Pettersson are feuding. It's a bad situation. The Kraken needed to come out of here with 2 points against this team, and they didn't do it. And that's on them ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, I mean, if you're thinking playoffs, like you're not wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and especially this is a team you're chasing, you know, any point that you give up, even by going to overtime, is there that gets a portmanteau.
Look at the next 2 teams they're playing, Edmonton and New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, we can, as far as opponent strength, like who knows with this team?
I was gonna say
Edmonton. I never feel confident, but like they bring good efforts against good teams. It seems like.
Yeah, they've done a good job of bringing better efforts against better teams this season. I think you still get the positive of having a comeback, right? This is still a game in which you're able to come back from a multi-goal deficit. I think you'd said, I don't know if you said it at the beginning of this, RJ, right? But you were talking about it on the press bridge.
Oh, I didn't mention it, actually.
This team had 0 multi-goal comebacks last season, and this was their 7th as far as like being able to
Well, actually, it would be multi-goal comebacks to win it.
So they're still at 6. So they're still at 6.
Yeah.
It's, already like infinitely better than what they were last season. This is another one where they're able to come back and at least tie it, force overtime, pick up a point. I feel like it's still an okay result. The team understands what they did wrong in this one, right? That's over half the battle, is just figuring out where the problems lied. This game was infinitely easier to pick out and say, this was the problem tonight. This is where we struggled, right? We were making poor decisions with the puck in our own zone, kept getting trapped in our own zone. It led to a couple goals, led to some prolonged sequences in the second. It led to us being anemic offensively and the Canucks being able to catch us up in shots on goal because we were making those undisciplined plays with the puck, as Dan Bylsma would put it, right? The fact that it was so easy to identify that, I feel like, is very different than a lot of the games earlier on in this season, or even just a couple weeks ago before the break, where it was just like there's either too much to talk about that's not going right for them and that they're struggling with, or it just feels like the universe itself is pushing back against them. This felt like a very, like I said, this game really spoke for itself in the sense that you know exactly what you did wrong in this one that led to the position you found yourself in. And yes, you're able to fight back, claw back, get a point out of it. But you also know exactly what you need to work on, tomorrow in practice, if you practice, or on the next morning skate, or what you need to be looking at in the video room before that next game, because the one thing that really killed you was just those turnovers and those poor decisions and those undisciplined decisions, as Dan Bylsma would say.
Right. And I think, I know Steve kind of disagreeing here, no business. They're still a better team. They had revenge on their mind. They're on the first night of a back-to-back. It was full effort.
It didn't look like it coming out.
No, it really didn't. No, like they They
Okay,
did not look motivated to start this one.
Okay, do they have a better roster? Yeah, but you got 3-star players out. The team's feuding. You lose your goalie halfway through. The Kraken won a few days ago against this team. You stack all that up, plus the desperation that the Kraken have to have at this point with their place in the standings. I think that's a strong argument that they should have come out and won this game.
I counter that, Glenn, with, do you really think the Kraken can win 3 games in a row?
Brilliant counter argument there, Dylan. I mean, I guess, look, where I'm at with this too is that, look, the Kraken just need to get points no matter who it's against. And if they're going to do this thing where they play up or down to the team in front of them, then, okay, it goes both ways and there's no excuses. You get, look, last 3 games, they got 5 out of 6 points. That's great. That's what you need, right?
Yeah.
But you also have to do that against the Edmonton Oilers, against the New Jersey Devils. And so, you know, we can say getting a point here is okay, but because you got 5 out of 6 points, but you also need to get, 3 out of 4 points or better probably against Edmonton and New Jersey. And you just, like, if you're going to kind of say that it doesn't matter that the Canucks are so beat up and you just play the team in front of you, you also have to play the team in front of you the next 2 games. And I think you just have to be kind of consistent on that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the important thing is that they played an entertaining game. The young players played well again. I just think that's the big takeaways that really, if you're this organization, you need to be looking for on a night in, night out basis. And that's been happening these last 3 games. Yes, you've had team success and you've gotten 5 of the last 6 points, but even if you didn't, I think you'd still want to see the results that you have been getting from those kind of more key members of your long-term core.
Yeah, and I think that is, an important thing to look at. But I think even more important than that, I think the most important thing, Dylan, and you kind of missed it at the start here, I think we need to get Glenn a burger, because I was talking about the burger of the month at Queen Anne Beer Hall, and Glenn looked real hungry. I'm surprised he's still here. I'm surprised he hasn't walked over to the beer hall yet.
Say, should still be open.
He's losing energy here now.
Yeah.
Low blood sugar.
Yeah,
I think you need to take some of those bank deposits and invest them in a burger and maybe even a pretzel at Queen Anne Beer Hall. So I want to give them another shout out. Big thank you for sponsoring this episode of Postgame Live. The Kraken face the mighty Edmonton Oilers in a couple days right here at Climate Pledge Arena. It's going to be an exciting game. Look, no excuses. Kraken are going to need to go get the points, go play against McDavid, against Draisaitl, and show up. And we will see you after that one.